I was one of those kids, and we all know them, and maybe we're some of them, where I was an extremely below average reader when it came to the speed at which I read and the reading comprehension growing up, like in middle school and even elementary school. I would read things, it'd take me a long time, and then when I was done, I couldn't tell you one thing that I just read. I couldn't recall it. And so I remember being embarrassed in mostly middle school because I would get pulled out of class, not for sports, not for some.
You are listening to the Bridging Impact Podcast, transforming leaders on and off the court with host Coach Furtado. Without further ado, let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Bridging Impact Podcast. I have our very first returning guest, one of our top-rated episodes, with the head of physics department at Antelope High School in Roseville, California, the one and only Andy Beronilla. Andy, welcome back to the show.
All right, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to doing a repeat ever since the first one.
There we go, and we're back to it. So with that being said, I know we're going to talk a lot about limiting beliefs and kind of what you're seeing in the physics department, how coaches and parents can help their athletes that are listening to this. But before we go into that, I want you to share, I'm not even sure if I asked this question the last time, but what kind of impact did playing sports and basketball specifically have for you, and maybe even how it inspired you to want to be a teacher?
Yeah, I mean, team sports are great. They teach you so much, and I know it's kind of a cliche, but it's really teaches you about character. Um, there's times where you're the star, and there's times where you're watching the other stars, and there's teams where you're the guy, and teams where you're a guy, maybe. Um, and so just being able to work with each other, with people who come from different backgrounds, different avenues of life, different goals, and being able to work with people and connect with people all for a common goal, that is an incredible skill that basketball and sports in general has taught me and allowed me, I think, to connect with people who are different than me, and and be able to reach them and work together with them. So I think that really helps me in teaching when I'm dealing with all different types of kids, all different types of backgrounds, um, religions, races, everything. Being able to connect with people who are different than me, but we have similar goals.
I like that. And obviously, of course, it's cliche, but it is so important, and that's such a great part about team sports is being able to connect and work towards a goal together. So, if you look back, like what teachers and coaches would you say like helped kind of influence and shape you, or maybe the opposite way around? Like I was like, I don't want to be this teacher and coach. And you don't have to necessarily name names, but
Yeah.
who are some of them that really helped you influence you are to where you are today?
Yeah, yeah. I would say in terms of coaches, he wasn't my direct coach, but he was the trainer at my junior college where I played. And it's crazy. As much as he did for me physically, the thing he did the most for me was make me believe and show me that like I can be great. Because I think up until that point, I was used to kind of being just a guy who fit in, who did the little things. But and I think you might remember back our high school team when I was a senior was one of the best that ever went through that high school. And then at my junior college, we were a pretty good team. And but again, I was just a guy. And for the first time, he showed me that I could be more than that. Whether it was actually performing on the court or more just the mindset of like I'm made for this, like I can do this. And what he really did for me was just make me believe as a player and as a person. The best thing I can say that he did for me was instill confidence in me that I had never felt from any coach before. His name was Jim Keating, and he was great for me. In terms of teachers, I had great teachers. We had great teachers at our high school, who just inspired me and really allowed me to be me, be kind of release my creative side. I think of Ann Bone Crawford. I think of Joanne Moore. They were really teachers who like I was an athlete in high school, but I definitely had a creative side, and they allowed me to release that creative side um, in ways that I hadn't been allowed to before. I felt like I was very much put in a box of like I'm an athlete. I played three different sports, and it for the first time. I'm like, man, I like drawing. I like writing. I like painting and creating things. And so they really showed me like I have a talent for that and it shouldn't be put away.
I like that. I like the both influences. In one case, right, they're helping you expand your mind, expand the box, right, expand kind of that
Yeah.
limiting belief on I am just an athlete, right, that identity kind of almost crisis that you're having in high school because you're trying to figure out ways that you can fit in, right, and then also having the coach Jim Keating talking about really instilling that confidence and that belief in you. Can you share some of the concrete examples or stories and words that he would tell you that really helped you instill that confidence into you?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that he really did was just put the power in my hands. He would ask me frequently in the middle of our trainings. He'd be like, "Is this all you want for yourself? Is this all you want?" And he'd make me say, "I want more." He'd like make me give verbal affirmations of like, I want to be better than this. I want this. And he as the workout's going on, like not just like in the breaks, like in the workout, he's like, "Is that all you got?" And we'd have to answer while we're going. And so what he did really was really let us release that thought because to that point, I had thought it. I had definitely had thoughts of like I want to be better, but to he made us say it. He brought it. He made us make it a reality. We had to say it out loud, and at first it felt uncomfortable, but
I,
what was amazing was like as we progressed, it became less of like a dream and more of like this is happening right now, right in front of me. And that year working with him was my biggest trajectory in basketball that I have had in 365 days. I went from a certain point to a point I had never reached before, and so much of that was mental, which I did not realize. I had these limiting beliefs of myself of like, oh, I'm just a guy who can do the little things, but I could do more and I could play more as an individual and do more and do things that I had always really wanted, but didn't believe that I could.
That's really powerful. And I think let's go right there and talk about those limiting beliefs and talk about those mental barriers that we often place on ourselves. Especially I feel like when you're in high school, it's almost you put on these mental barriers just to fit in sometimes, and other times it may just be confidence issues. So with that being said, I'd love for you to share, kind of the story that you told me before we hopped on about your limiting belief about reading and kind of how you were able to attack that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was one of those kids, and we all know them, and maybe we're some of them, where I was an extremely below average reader when it came to the speed at which I read and the reading comprehension growing up, like in middle school and even elementary school. I would read things, it'd take me a long time, and then when I was done, I couldn't tell you one thing that I just read. I couldn't recall it. And so I remember being embarrassed in mostly middle school because I would get pulled out of class, not for sports, not for some special thing. I get pulled out for reading help, reading guide. I'd work with a counselor to improve my reading, and people knew it, and I felt embarrassed because it was like a kind of a. I felt at the time, and again, I was 12 years old, but I felt like it was a shot at my character because I'm not as good at reading as my friends and my peers, and growing up with that belief that I'm not good at reading, uh, really I kind of self sabotaged myself because I told myself I wasn't good at reading. And so it's embarrassing to say, but all throughout high school and all throughout college, I did not read a single book cover to cover, not once. Did I have book assignments? Yep. Did I have assignments where like the goal was read this book and write this thing and then or summarize and present it? Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, you just asked me about my favorite teachers. One of those was my English teacher. So sorry, Miss Moore, I never actually read a book from cover to cover. I did a lot of skimming. I did a lot of skimming. I did a lot of Spark Notes, just anything to get by. And even in college, I was kind of, it didn't matter as much because I was a physics major. So a lot of it was more like performing and math based stuff. Um, but even then, I never read actually fully, truthfully, honestly read a book cover to cover. And I had an epiphany actually. It was only 2 years ago now, um, where that limiting belief stuck with me. And I told myself all my life I wasn't a good reader. And so I didn't practice reading. And because I didn't practice reading, I never got better at reading. So it was really a self sabotaging, self fulfilling prophecy. And I finally realized like I wanted to change that. Like, and it started with my mindset. And once I told myself, like, look, a fact is I'm slower. I'm a slower reader. My reading comprehension isn't great, but I can change. I can do something about that. And so, for the first time in my life, a year ago, I fully, honestly read every word of a book cover to cover, and it was awesome. And I know for a lot of people that's a small accomplishment, but for me, that's huge. Not reading a book since like for the majority of my life. Um, and it's funny, that book actually, the one I read, talked about limiting beliefs, and that's where it was almost like a sign to me in a way. Like I was feeling this way already, and then the book I happened to read spoke on exactly that. And it's really taken off from there. I'm still not a super fast reader, and I can admit that, and I'm okay with that. But the thing is, I'm getting better, and I've now read 4 or 5, maybe 6 books now, cover to cover. Honestly, all words. I can look in the mirror and say I did not cheat it. I read every word. I can recall what happened, so I'm getting better. And what's been cool is like connecting that idea to sports, to people in general, to life. Um, I think people in general have a lot of limiting beliefs that cause them to not go for what they want, and they don't even give their dreams a chance or their goals a chance because they tell themselves they can't. And so that, and mindset's everything. So without that, you can't even start your goals.
Feel like that's a really serendipitous moment to like read about limiting beliefs when you're starting to connect the dots of like, okay, wow, I can become a great reader, right? Where I'm at right now, and I think that this is the hardest thing to recognize almost as human is like where I'm at right now does not mean where I'm going to finish, right? It's like you were kind of talking about before, moving that goalpost, right? We can still with a small goalpost. We can start at the 10-yard line, then we go to the 20. We don't have to try and score a touchdown right away. And so just trying to, kind of get out of our comfort zones a little bit here and there. So with that being
Yeah.
said, can you talk about how you with your physics students and talking about how you're not coaching you're teaching collegiate level and I'm in such a sports mode collegiate level physics can you talk about how even some of the smartest and brightest students at your school still have limiting beliefs of their own learning ability?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And so, yeah, for the first time in my career, I actually taught college level physics, and I'm currently doing that. Um, and what's so different is that I'm in the room with the smartest kids on campus. So these kids are absolutely used to getting A's on everything. I've actually checked a lot of their transcripts. Some of them have not had a single B, B anything in high school or in middle school, which is that's crazy to me. I mean, I was a pretty good student myself, but that's pretty impressive. The problem with that, though, that success in that way, if you have to look at it as a problem, is that they're so used to getting that. And if they don't get an A, they think it's the end of the world. I've had some students cry over A minus. I've had some students say they want to drop out over a B plus. And what I really had to have a couple talks with them, and I still continue to do it, about where we put the goalpost. What's good enough? What does it mean to succeed? And the problem is that their limiting belief is an A is success. An A means I'm good enough because that's what they've kind of told themselves their whole life. And what I remind them is that this course, AP Physics, this is a true fact. In the United States, AP Physics has the highest fail rate of any subject of any class in any high school in America. And so I told them, like, the average passing score on the AP college level exam is a 45%. A 45% pass. And for them, they're like, oh, truthfully, I've heard this. 45% is for dumb kids. And it's it's crazy because I get it. No one wants to score a 45%, but on this exam, with the difficulty that it is, the topics that it is, AP Physics, 45% passes you and gets you college credit. And so I'm trying to remind them of what's good enough. What does it mean to be good enough in this class? A B plus does not mean you're a failure. An A minus does not mean you're not good enough. Like, changing their beliefs on that and putting the goalpost at the right place. Because if you're always putting your goalpost too far ahead, you're always going to come up short in your life. And you're not going to feel very good about your life when you do that. I kind of look at it the same way as like weight training. Like if you say, I gotta I gotta bench 2 plates on each side. Well, it's like you gotta work towards it. And if you bench more than you did before and you improve a lot, I think that's really the goal. Is you improved, you learned a lot, you gained a lot of knowledge, you improved yourself, and that's really what success is about. It shouldn't be this goalpost that is so far extended that, and if you don't reach it, you're a failure. And that's what I just try to instill in those kids is like, you belong here. You're doing well. You're doing great. Understand what it means to be good enough and where you put that goalpost.
Got you. And so with that, I think that's a very important point that you're talking about. And I'm kind of just thinking like, I feel like a lot of times in society, we just pick a one goalpost, one size fits all for everyone, right? Whether that be basketball, whether that's in the classroom in physics, and we just compare ourselves to other people instead of setting our own goalposts. So how can like coaches and teachers and parents help their athletes set their own goalposts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's coaches and parents also having their own goalposts for their kids. Very recently, I went to one of the basketball games at my school. These are kids I used to coach, and so I know them fairly well. And a kid had 10 points off the bench and one bad turnover, but he had 10 points off the bench. And I remember after the game, his head's down. The team won the game, by the way. His head's down. He's not happy. And I said, dude, what's going on? You had a great game. He's like, no, I didn't. Did you see that turnover? And it's like, if the goalpost is zero turnovers, then I guess he had a bad game, but that's not a healthy or productive goalpost. This kid had 10 points off the bench, which is rare in high school. Some kids average 10 a game. He had 10 off the bench. And so I think it's just so important that we are realistic with them about where the goalpost should be, and also giving praise for things that are outside of what we might measure as the goalpost. Like um, getting the rebounds, doing the dirty work, doing the little things, and really measuring yourself up. Like if you put your goalpost at, I need to get 20 points a game. Well, that's kind of out of your control. There's so many things that could come into play. Maybe they play a different defense on you. Maybe your shot's just not hitting that day. And so I think it's so important to instill in our athletes to take their power back. Put the power in your hands. Measure yourself up to yourself, no one else's expectations, what you call a good game, what you call a good performance. um, Making sure that you put it off of that, put your goalpost there rather than people's expectations or what you see on TV, or just comparing to others. And I think what's so hard is a lot of us, including parents and coaches, because that's kind of part of the sports, is judging a person's worth off performance. And that's been hard for me to overcome in my own life. Is I felt like a lot throughout my life, viewed as an athlete, a lot of my character worth as a person was judged off performance. And that's been a hard struggle for me to overcome throughout my life. And it's still sometimes hard because I seek that validation. I've been used to getting praise for performance. And if we only give kids and young athletes praise when they perform well, they grow up learning that they have to perform well to be good enough, to be good as a person. And so when sports are over, you really want to instill confidence in kids that, like, you are more than your performance. You are more than this numbers, you are more than the score. You do great things. And so that's what it comes down to. Like when I say limiting beliefs and measuring, putting the goalpost at the right place, is like, what makes a great person? What makes a great teammate? It's not some of the very cliche things that we sometimes think of. And so from a personal standpoint, teaching, like I mentioned, like, it has been a challenge to make this college level class fun in a sense. And I think that's what is my strength in regular physics, is making class fun. And that's what keeps kids motivated. But in a college level class like this, it's hard to find the fun in it and creating the fun. And so for a while early, while I was teaching this, I was putting my goalpost at our kids having fun. And when I didn't see kids smiling and I didn't see kids enjoying it or talking extremely highly like they do in regular physics of me, I would tell myself I'm a bad teacher. I would tell myself I'm not good enough. And if if I'm that's me putting the power in 15-year-olds hands. That's me saying you get to decide if I'm good enough, if I'm a good teacher. And then so it really made me think, like, man, what makes a great teacher? And I thought about it and I really had to write these down, and I was like, man, like, connecting to their lives, making content relevant, um, improving their understanding. Those are what makes a great teacher. And when I looked at it, wait a sec, I'm doing those things. I am a great teacher. And so that's kind of a personal example of what I mean by moving the goalpost. Like my goalpost was basically letting other people either tell me if I reached it or not. And so as athletes, I think the should not come from did my coach tell me I did good. It should come from internally of what I measure up and what I decide is good.
That's a really interesting point, and it's finding some of those measurables, right? That not necessarily you see on social media. That's not necessarily having 25 points per game, but how did I really contribute to this team? And I can even speak from a coaching standpoint. It's really hard sometimes, especially because coaching is such a long game, right? I'm playing it to where like I see them in 10 years and I see them being productive citizens, right? And I, as a human right now, I want to see my results, right? I want to feel the impact, the work I'm doing. And so, the easiest way to do that is did we win or lose, right? It doesn't even matter. Like we could have played our butts off. We've played a very good team and we lost by 2, or we win by 4 against a team we should have beat by 30, and like for whatever reason we feel better because we won, and even though we didn't play well, right? We judge ourselves based off of those wins and losses, and in reality, it's the harder thing to do is to judge ourselves off of our performance on necessarily how we are progressing, right? Are we getting better? Are we hitting more shots? Are we, do we have some more continuity, some more flow on offense? Are we making sure that we allow no middle? And we just ran into some 6'7", 6'8" guys, and we're not that big. So of course they're going to have a natural advantage, but we competed all the way to the end. And so it's so tough to do that, right? Like it's like so not naturally, especially
Yeah.
I feel like social media has made it way worse for kids and even for coaches now though, like I can even explain,
Yeah.
naturally, sometimes I'm like, as soon as I see a coach, like I'm either like good drill, bad coach, right? Instead of just being like, I don't even know the context of what this coach is and the why behind it. I'm just making a judgment. So it's almost like not judging other people so we don't judge ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I think Kobe, and I'm gonna paraphrase this, but he basically said it's like the destination's not the goal, it's the journey that's really the goal. And
Right.
that's really what it's all about. It's like throughout the journey, what are you learning? Are you improving? Are you getting better? Are you feeling stronger physically and mentally? Like all it's crazy because all those things can be true, and then if you lose the game, you don't feel great, right? But it's
Yeah.
like you can do
Yeah.
all. I think it's just shining some light on the journey for a lot of people.
No, we're good.
Best friends in my life, you know him as well. He always like used to say like I want to be in shape, I want to be in shape, and but he also had some limiting beliefs around that of like, oh, my family history, my metabolism, my things like this, my things like that. And then it's crazy because he lost, I think, close to 100 pounds and completely
Wow.
changed his life. But what he said when I talked to him is like, what kept him going was not the idea of the end. It was seeing the little wins each day, seeing the little wins each week, getting better each week. And that's really what kept him going. It wasn't this idea of this perfect mold at the end. And at one point it was, and that wasn't helping him. What really kept him going was celebrating the little wins each day, each week, each hour, each month. That kept him going. And I think for so much with athletes, it's like you're right. We look at the thing that gets the most noticed. Did we measure up? Did we do that? Well, if we don't, if that's our goalpost, we're gonna come up short. But if we celebrate each win in our own way, whatever a win means to us, it's gonna keep motivating us further to do well and to keep trying and stay motivated.
Yeah, celebrating the small wins, and I feel like that's one of the things that it's can be very addicting in a good way, right? Like you get kind of addicted to wanting to get better and have progress. I know for me and building BTG basketball, right? Like last year around this time, I had like 6 to 8 kids that I was training, and now I have like 40 kids on 4 different teams. So it's just like I sometimes I'll even like, I'll think about, oh, I should just give this up. And because I see some of the other programs, right, that have like 8 teams. They're middle school through all their, it seems, right, it seems like they're all booked up all the time, and in reality, they're having the same challenges that I'm having. And I think that's one of the things that I've been trying to recognize with myself is like, oh, we built it. Like, it takes a little by little. You can't have a blowout basketball Jones 150 kid camp overnight. It takes a little bit of time. So just recognizing that for ourselves. And I think really, I feel like for coaches and then teachers and parents, just creating like a culture and an environment where we celebrate that at home, where we celebrate the little things instead of always chasing the collegiate scholarship, right? That's the big gemstone. But what are the little benchmarks to potentially get there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I think you hit it. It's like these things aren't built overnight. These goals aren't reached overnight. And I think as parents, and I'm not a parent myself, but dealing with kids through teaching, I think so much of it also has to do with letting them make the goal, letting them tell us what did they do well, letting them tell us what are their goals for this time, and creating an open space for that. Because I think when we as adults place our expectations and our benchmarks on these kids, that's not their goal. That's our goal. That's our goal to see in them. And and sometimes it can be done in a productive way where it's motivating to them. But I think there's such value in letting the kids be the one, giving them the power to set their own goals, their own expectations, and telling us, letting them, giving them space to tell us what they think they did well and what they think they should improve on. Um, I think when we tell them before we let them tell us, we cut them off, we limit them, and then I think they're influenced by an adult voice to say what we want to hear. Whereas if we just leave an open floor and say, "Hey, what are you looking forward to this season? What are you trying to get better at? Where do you measure up when you think of a game? Where do you say would tell me that you think you had a good game so that I know?" Because that's one of the most crushing things in sports, I think, is when, and it's a form of rejection, really. It's when you think you did well and someone you look up to told you it wasn't enough. And I think that's what's so hard in sports and in life in general. So if we as parents and coaches have a better understanding of what the kids view as their goals and their goalposts, we can work with that. We can, and maybe there will be times that we have to tone it down a little bit to make it a little more realistic, but at least we know it's coming from them, rather than us putting it on them or some other adult placing this responsibility and these expectations on them.
And I feel like this is a newer shift in philosophy in teaching and coaching. So can you talk about how, you know, making physics fun, making basketball fun? Because I feel like there's a preconceived notion that in sports and for basketball coaches, like they have to run lines. Like this is going to be hard. We're going to do the monotonous. We're going to do the boring, right? Which obviously working on certain fundamentals, and not every aspect of basketball is going to be fun. There are going to be certain days, but
Yeah,
also shifting a little bit, giving them the power on what they want to, on their goals, on their team goals, instead of it just always being coach. Because I honestly think one of the most important life skills for kids and going into this new generation that we're in with AI and everything, like a lot of like simple jobs are going to be automated. So like what we really need is creative thinkers and problem solvers that AI can't do, that we need actual human solutions. And if we're just always giving them the answer, they're not going to be able to do that and develop that. So can you talk about how the importance
yeah,
of just making it fun and making it an experience for them to kind of explore and be creative?
yeah. There's something called deliberate play that
Yeah.
Steph Curry does, and his trainer has instilled in him. And I've actually tried to shift mindset in this, is where you turn things into games. Because if you're having fun and you're enjoying and it's treated as a game, you don't realize you're getting better, just like you don't realize you're learning. One of the best things that I've reviews that I've gotten from students has been that it I sometimes we're having so much fun that I forget that I'm learning. And that's been the best. And I think that can absolutely be instilled in sports as well. As like there's a time for hard, heavy drills in practice, and there's times to hit the plays hard to make sure everyone knows it. But I equally think that it's important to have play and just some freedom. And what that looks like, and from what I've learned and understood from what Steph Curry and his trainer do, it's you against you. It's games against yourself. It's timed things. It's shooting a certain amount of shots in a certain amount of time and making a certain amount of shots in a certain amount of out of a certain amount of shots. So like a percentage. And I've tried to do this with myself, and I find myself after like, wait, that I feel less pressure on myself. I'm not like I need to make 7 out of 10. It's like, okay, yesterday I made 6 out of 10. Today, I made 7 out of 10. My goal might have been to make 9 out of 10, but did I get better? Yes, I did. And so when you do some drills where the only goal is to beat yourself from last time, there's a shift in mindset in that, and it starts to build that mental strength in kids. I mean, I say kids, it worked for myself too. Um, I'm less hard on myself. And again, I know I've said it a million times in this podcast, but it's really about where you put the goalpost. And so I'll do drills where, like, yeah, I have 2 minutes on the clock. I got to make a certain amount of these shots, or I'm trying to make a certain amount of these shots, and my only goal is look at what I got last time, try to beat that. It's not I need to get 17 out of 20 every time. I need to get 17 out of 20. It's just like get better than I was yesterday, get better than I was before. And Steph Curry does that a lot. And you can see if you look up videos of Steph Curry working out, he's having fun. He's smiling while he's doing it. He's feeling good. And I think it's so much as a shift in mindset. Um, and when it comes to my teaching, I think I try to, as much as I can, include games, include silly conversations, include weird activities, include building things within the hard teaching of the college level. But if they're able to have fun, learning comes with it. And truthfully, I know I said this last podcast, but I still wholeheartedly believe this. I don't think learning and having fun can't coexist. I actually think you learn more when you're enjoying yourself, because then you're more willing to try, you're more vulnerable to being wrong, and you have more resilience when if you are wrong to get better. If you're having fun while you're learning, I think you learn more than if you separate the two and you have a section of fun, a section of learning. You combine them. I think it's a winning combination.
Right. It's developing and helping them cultivate that passion for the subject, whether that be physics or whether that be basketball or whatever subject it is. If you have passion for that, if you're having joy and fun, you're going to want to get better. You're going to want to keep showing up, and it's not going to become monotonous. And there'll be a time in life where maybe they pursue a profession that is monotonous, and I think a lot of times what I hear from coaches is sometimes it'll be the monotonous and like the boring prepares them for life, and it's like, well, they're kids, let's give them this experience, and maybe this will open them up to another door and they'll become an environmental engineer because they figure out they love doing it, and they love basketball, so they kind of connect those dots. So you never know about how we can kind of expand and open their mind. And one of the things that you kind of touched on is also the resilience aspect of it. You're going to be a lot more resilient when you encounter challenges, when you love something. So that'll be my last kind of question of the podcast is, how do you help your students or the athletes you've worked with, or even yourself, kind of go through some of those roadblocks? Because as we both know, right, it's not going to be a 6 out of 7 and then a 7 out of 7 and an 8 out of 8, right? Sometimes one day it's 6 out of 10, next day is 3 out of 10, then the next day is 9 out of 10, right? And so it's a little bit of a journey. So how do you help with the resilience and the setbacks in the
Yeah.
progress?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier about just putting the power in their hands. I'm still the coach, I'm still the teacher, but I think I can be a better coach and a better teacher by giving them more power. So when in the teaching realm, the way that looks for me is like learning about what they're into, asking questions to see what they're into, and then connecting that to their real life, and then knowing that they've asked me questions, and then teaching things, building my teaching off of their topics, off of the things they're interested in, making content relatable. And so by connecting it in that way, I think they're more engaged and they learn to love it more because they realize, wait, this isn't just this random subject. This is something that connects to my life. And in the basketball realm, the training realm, again, it's asking them what they care about, what they want to get better at, and reminding them of that goal. Like when they hit that goal, reminding them of that. Just like we talked about, they could maybe the goal is to get improve at this. Well, if they have a bad shooting day, show them like, wait, but hold on, you might have had not a great shooting day today, but when we look at the progress you've made, you have improved at that goal. So reminding them of that goal, and giving them praise when they reach their goals, and making sure that we're not just giving them praise when they reach our expectations and our goals, but giving them praise when they reach theirs. And I think that's going to keep the motivation high, keep them wanting to come back, keeping them passionate about something, and building their confidence and motivation.
100%. And I think that that's a great way to kind of, you know, cap off our podcast, is recognizing the importance of the body of work over time, right? Don't fall down just because it was one day. You're going back, look back, and I had my athletes look at this in the past year, right? At the end, I did kind of like exit interviews with some of my players after the season. I was like, we've been working, some of them I've been working together since the May the previous season. And I'm like, are you better? And they're like, oh yeah, way better, coach. It's just like, okay, so right, keep that in mind. That's your expectation for the end of next season, right? You're going to be like selling me, oh yeah, coach, I'm way better, right? And so getting them to look at that long term, that body of work over time, I think is really important. So, do you have any final last pieces of words of advice on how we can impact kids more with limiting beliefs, and where can, I know maybe some people listen to the first one. This may be some people's first time listening. So where can people find and connect with you?
Yeah, in terms of my lasting words, I would just say for everyone, student, athlete, kid, adult, anyone, start looking seriously into yourself, and see if you have any limited beliefs, and see if you can actually change them, because it all starts with mindset. It really all does, whether that's on the court, in the office, with your job, with your life, with your love life, with your goals, whatever you have going. Look at your, if you have any limiting beliefs that are causing you to create negative self-fulfilling prophecies, and see if you can change them. And then as you're going through that change, make sure that you're putting the goalpost at appropriate places. Because if you put it too far out, or you put it in an unhealthy place, you're going to lose the goal. You're going to lose the motivation. So put it in an appropriate place once you get the ball rolling. I think will keep you on the right track, keep you motivated, and help you reach your goals. And in terms of reaching me, Instagram's great. It's at Andy Beronilla. So AndyBeronilla. And Justin, thank you. Like, I know I didn't say this enough when you said this, to hear about how your camps are progressing and blowing up. Like, I remember when we did this over a year ago now, thinking like, I wonder how this is going to go for him. And to see you do this, and to see this, and following some of the podcasts, and following some of the stuff you're posting, and seeing the smiles that you bring, it's been inspiring, and it's been motivating for me. And it's just great to see someone so great doing what he loves, and doing great things, and making big changes.
Appreciate you, bro. This is it's been a lot of fun, and we'll get you back on for a third time around in about a year.
Yeah. Yep, that's all I want. I just want to keep coming back. I love it.
All right. Thank you, Andy.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bridging Impact Podcast. We'd love it if you would like, subscribe, leave a comment and a review on whatever platform you're on. It's the best way to help us grow. We appreciate you for doing that. We'll shout you out on social media. I'd also love if you connected with me on social media. Let me know your thoughts. And this is why I do it. I want to share knowledge and wisdom from experienced leaders to people like yourself and myself, so we can have this dialogue and move forward, make an impact on the world. So stay tuned, stay subscribed. Cheers.